Mr. Speaker, this data protection bill and a bill to protect data has to be seen as well-intentioned in the face of what the revolution that has taken place in data collection and, of course, the technology and doing business locally, regionally, and internationally. The need to protect data is fundamental. And it must be pointed out that governments since 2011, and that was the NDC government in office, confronted this phenomenon. And it was then pointed out by regional organizations, including the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union and the OECS, that we need, as a sub-region, to have a harmonized the entire process. So one is not, I want to make it very clear, one is not here to oppose the initiative of a data collection bill. In fact, our government was part of this process. It was when the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union presented a draft of a harmonized bill throughout the OECS. It was intended through consultation, from what I understood, that bill need to be given wide consultation through the entire OECS, and in the case of each country, wide consultation within the society involved. And each government has a responsibility to tailor the bill for its own circumstances. And therefore, it was quite in order for that to be done. So in many years past, through the NDC government and the first NNP government from 2013 to 2018, consultation and discussions were held, but nothing, the process was not moved sufficiently. It was in 2021, stakeholder initiative was done and consultation was held within the public sector, including the legal department. The government then asked the Attorney General's office to proceed to look at that bill and make the necessary adjustments as it's seen by them, to recommend to the cabinet to go forward to Parliament. That process was certainly not completed, and the ministry had reported that they were not able to get the consultation process done at the time. So the election was held, and of course, that bill was never discussed at all the levels that it should have been. and that of course includes the Bar Association, the trade union movement, the business community, the churches, and all concerned. The point is, Mr. Speaker, this bill has enormous impact on all persons in the society. All persons in the society it has impact on. So the need to have the consultative process done is extremely relevant. And that's as my main concern. Clearly there are aspects of this bill that we should be discussing, pros and cons. But my intervention and seeking the support of the government is for us not to proceed with this bill at this time, so that wide consultation can be held. And that, Mr. Speaker, is why I'm standing. It's very rare that one stands when the government is moving to move the standing order. That normally is probably the first time I have done so. But because of the critical nature of this bill, in fact, I did ask our representative, who in our process of consultation for bills coming to Parliament, I did ask the member for St. Mark's to contact her counterpart at the government side to see to it that we just read the bill first reading, and that is a normal process in many Commonwealth countries, where bills of a substantial nature is brought to Cabinet, to Parliament, but then the consultation process begins afterwards, and sometimes parliamentary subcommittee could easily be appointed to oversee that process. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm calling on my colleagues in this honorable House, not that this bill is not necessary, it's absolutely necessary, but in the present form, there could be adjustments made to satisfy the fears and concerns of many persons. I've been getting calls left, right, and center when this thing came out. So I thought it best that we do this. I don't think it's admitting that we failed in any respect. I think it's admitting that the process need to be advanced in a more consultative process way, and that we should come back in due course, and we could specify time, Mr. Speaker, if the government indicates that there is something of absolute importance which requires the passage of this bill, then we could decide on a quick period of time for the consultative process. That is my request to my colleagues on the other side of the House, and I hope, Mr. Speaker, that this is certainly done. Let's do it in a way that is showing that we are big enough to talk to each other and make decisions that we consider best for all concerned. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Leader of the Opposition. I'm not sure, Honourable Member for the Town of St. George, we are at the debating stage. I wanted to put it to the vote, and when we get to the second reading, we allow for the debate. Because if it doesn't carry with the vote, then it doesn't carry.
May I, Mr. Speaker, on the point of clarification?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, a motion has been presented to suspend rules.
Yes,
a motion. Once you suspend the rules by a vote, then my comments on why we should not becomes irrelevant. It becomes a moot point. I think when we're asked to suspend, And we can have a viewpoint on whether or not, one, it is the right thing to do, but secondly, whether or not is it the right thing by our rules. So there must be space, there must be an opportunity for us to respond to the request. The member is not requesting one side or the other do it. He's requesting that members of the House agree to suspend. You know the Constitution does not recognize political parties. We are organized as political parties for politics. But I want to submit to you, Mr. Speaker, that I want to respond to the request to suspend. And I can't see how that will violate.
Honorable MP, just go ahead and respond.
Much obliged. So I'm allowed to speak to the matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to take off from where the leader of the opposition started. We respond to people. We in this House respond to, we don't represent ourselves. We represent the people. So for example, I as an attorney must consider that there's a bar association out there that has to have its views here, that the community groups, the trade unions, we represent people. We on this side accept that these bills are important. The fact is, as the leader of the opposition said, the way the world is and the way data has become so prevalent and important in our society that we have to always be very careful how we handle it. So I am not standing here today, as the leader of the opposition said, to suggest that we don't need it. In fact, the leader of the opposition pointed out that we agree that we should bring data protection legislation. And we support the data protection legislation. But I am not so arrogant as to believe that I know everything about data protection, and there are people in our society who have been speaking about data protection legislation. I heard my goodly colleague, Dr. Alexis, on Sunday, giving a wide exposition on his concerns, his fears, but also his support for aspects of the bill. So the question is, how do we approach? There is a fear outside there, Mr. Speaker, among our people. We heard it when we were in government, and I'm sure you're going to hear it. Anytime legislation is being passed, where, as they say it in the US, Big Brother is being given more powers to invade what people believe is privacy, people become extremely concerned. And so they should. Because there is constant intrusion into privacy by the state in many countries. So we are not just making this thing up. It is a fear out there. In fact, I see people talking about how could they just come and search you. No, I'm not suggesting that I support the concern, but these concerns must be allayed, because you cannot bring laws into force if people do not support it. If you don't get the buy-in of the population, then you will have more problems in the enforcement stage because people do not understand it. I remember during the referendum debate, there were all kinds of fears about all kinds of intrusions. It is natural in our society for that to happen. So people are very concerned, and you hear it. People are concerned that this is an attempt by the state to restrict some constitutional freedoms. I'm not saying I agree. I am saying it is out there. That is why we are calling for deeper and wider consultation. Not because we do not understand it. We have had time to read it. We have studied it. We understand that it is a necessary legislation. So please do not say that we had time to look at it. Yes, we had time. We looked at it. And we have concerns we will express. But this is not about us. It's about people. Because you see, no act should come into force without the people understanding it. Enforcement will become extremely difficult. And as Dr. Alexis himself said on Sunday, it has become what he's called settled convention, a practice, so to speak, that laws like these should be given to subject itself to consultation. It has become a practice. In fact, when we were in government, I was back in the NDC government when this matter was raised, and I know the concerns that was raised, so it was pulled back. Then our government, the NNP government was bringing it, and then it was held for further consultation, because these laws are not to be underestimated in its capacity to give the state powers that can be abused. Sometimes you assume that the power that you're given is in somebody's hands who is reasonable. Yes, maybe today we have a reasonable attorney who is Prime Minister. I am not suggesting that he will abuse it, or the President Commissioner, or any member on the other side. But these laws are not there for us. It's there for whoever is in charge whenever that happens. So the Bar Association, the trade unions, the business communities, the NGO, the citizenry as a whole. And I say all of this, Mr. Speaker, to ask for more time for the people on whose behalf I am speaking. We understand that some international organizations may bring pressure on us to pass legislation. We've had that. We've had times that we have to rush to Parliament because we have a deadline by the end of the year. We've had that. If there is such pressure, then the government should say, listen, there is an urgency because. So let us balance that urgency with the urgency of consultation. Those two things have to be balanced, because the same international organizations that will rush it want us to rush it through. When the citizenry becomes upset, they will abandon us. So we have democracy is what we talk about. And please don't say we have done it. You are in government, we are in government. We may have made errors, and you have said that we will come and correct it. In fact, Mr. Speaker, last week, all of the members here were present. We sat for days talking about how do we better parliamentary procedure for 3 full days. I had the opportunity to lead a discussion on cross-party working in the Parliament. We all said that we need to do it more. We all said it without reservation. In fact, some on both sides call me idealistic. Idealistic if I believe we can work together. I accept I'm idealistic, but everything starts with a dream. When Jules Verne was writing about space travel, people thought it was crazy, but it happened. So yes, we can work together. There was overwhelming support in a parliamentary meeting with our friends from the UK that we should work together. Let us prove that the idealism that some of us have can become a reality. Let us, in this case, do what we practiced last week for 3 days. Let us set up a joint select committee with members from the upper house, members from the lower house. Let us call in the people who have concerns. So you call the Bar Association, you call the business community, because this will affect business. The transfer of information does affect business. Let us do that. And remember, politics is not a zero-sum game. I'm not here to fight. I'm at the stage where my dream, my idealism of us working together, and I remember men pointed examples of what, Mr. Speaker, you did, of how happy you were to see some parliamentarians working together. Let us do it in here. Let us find out, let us set up a joint parliamentary committee. Let us sit and call in some evidence. Let's stand when we're finished and say we agree. Nothing wrong with agreeing. You know, Mr. Speaker, when the cannabis legislation was brought, we, in fact, it's still somewhere in the Parliament, because we submitted it, we did consultations before, we submitted for first reading the cannabis legislation in this House, and we put it off for further consultation. It's still there. And I hear there's consultation taking place on cannabis. So if consultation can take place on cannabis, why can't it take place? You know, there are sections of this law. For example, people are concerned about section 44, section 33, search and seizure. Anytime people hear about people having the right to come in your house and search and seize, all hell break loose. I say all of this to say, Mr. Speaker, without going much further, that there is nothing wrong with us agreeing today, as we did last week, just across the hall. Just across the hall, we agreed that there are instances. We spoke about Ivan, we spoke about economic crisis, we spoke about COVID. Those were instances where we felt, and we must take some blame to all of us. Must take some blame for not working hard enough to work together. All of us. We said last week, let's start a new chapter. There is no better time to start a new chapter than now. Now, I therefore ask Mr. Speaker that we simply say it's done for first reading. As a leader of the opposition said, I fully agree. We put it off for 2 weeks. I don't know if there's an urgency that we are not aware. I don't know if the IMF or the World Bank decided to cut off all funding if you don't pass it today. But I did hear my colleague, the member from St. David, indicate during the campaign that he's not going to let the IMF and them insist and force us down any particular road. But if it is that there is an unavoidable urgency, we have no difficulty. If the interest of Grenada is at stake, we have no difficulty in saying to this House that we support. But there must be transparency in terms of why you want to bring in a piece of legislation and let's get it done in one day. And please don't tell me we did it before. You campaign that we are going to stop. Please don't do that. So if there is an urgency, please tell us so we can report back to our brethren in the United Kingdom that we said last week we were going to work together, that we are unable to start yet. Mr. Speaker, you were there. You know how elated we were. This, in my view, is an excellent opportunity that we here will work together. We will fight when we have to fight, when we disagree. We don't disagree on this issue. We agree that we need data protection, and we agree that this legislation is important to be passed. Please don't say we are against data collection protection, data protection. But let us, and I know all my colleagues who were so excited last week about working together, indicated all kinds of manifestations where we could work together. Let's start now. There is nothing better than to do the right thing today. Much obliged, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable MP for the Town of St. George. Who's like, Honorable? Well, 2 lights are on. Is it Prime Minister's light?
Sorry.
I don't know which one came up first.
I yield to my colleague, thank you.
Pardon?
I yield to my colleague, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Honorable Member for St. Andrews Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning I rise not to debate this bill, but I stand to support my colleagues that we ought not to take this bill through all of the stages. I humbly beg of the government's team this morning in this House that we put this bill open to the public for further discussion, for explanation. And you know what is interesting, Mr. Speaker? So many people have been crying to understand what we are going to do. So many people have been expressing fear and concern, not a drumbeat, not a sound of explanation. And Mr. Speaker, for me, that is what is most frightening. I have not heard an attempt to say, this is what is coming, this is what we're thinking of doing, this is the urgency. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking urgency, and I'm bringing my mind back to a previous bill that was to be brought to this very House, Mr. Speaker. I sense an urgency to protect lives in the peak of a pandemic. But Mr. Speaker, we said, no. Don't go so fast. Don't proceed further. Take it for consultation. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, this morning, I try not to get too surprised, too shocked, but I'm shocked. My colleague whispered to me this morning, this bill would not be taken through all its stages. was wrong. Very wrong. And, you know, for a moment I wanted to agree with her that amidst all the concern that are expressed publicly by people irregardless of their political affiliation, that this administration would not have come here this morning to say that we want to pass this bill through all of its stages. Mr. Speaker, I want us to guard against the "is that" mentality. In other words, we say we're going to do that, is that. We're going to do it. We don't really care too much what you think, what your fears are, what your concerns are. We're going to do it, and we are doing it. Mr. Speaker, let us guard against that. We don't have to do it because we thought of doing it. We don't have to do it because we said we're going to do it. Mr. Speaker, reference was made to the cannabis bill. There was a cry for more consultation. And the previous administration said, yes, let's do more consultation. The COVID-19 bill, Mr. Speaker, was humbly withdrawn. Mr. Speaker, all I'm saying this morning is let us consider that there's a genuine fear, there is genuine concern, and we ought to be concerned if people feel that their fundamental rights, their fundamental freedom is being threatened through the passage of a bill. They might be totally wrong, but let us prove them wrong by giving them the time to agree that their rights and freedom through underlying sections in this bill is not threatened. Mr. Speaker, I'm appealing to the government team. It would not kill anybody. It would not hurt anybody. We put off the passage of an emergency COVID-19 bill in the midst of a pandemic. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I'm thinking, when I recall that period, members on the other side, if they were not currently on the other side, and a bill like this is tabled here today, Mr. Speaker, I feel confident that they would be in the yard with placards this morning. We choose a different approach. Our approach is to come here, appeal to your conscience to say, let us take time. Time would not kill. Let us take some time so that the people of Grenada, Carriacou and Peter Martinique, the people in the diaspora could feel a little more comfortable with the action to be taken. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable MP for St. Andrews South East. I now invite the Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It seems as if, Mr. Speaker, we're debating the motion to suspend the standing order so that the bill should be taken through its own stages. Let me first say good morning to you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to my distinguished colleagues and the staff of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, we are working together. This is the clearest example of what it means to work together. This bill, Mr. Speaker, is a bill drafted at the request of the government of the prior day. So let me provide some context, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Leader of His Majesty's Opposition admitted that the OECS, as a region, embarked upon since on about 2011. I want to emphasize, we know in 2023. Since 2011, upon a package of legislation aimed at addressing the fact that the world and the OECS was increasingly moving to and processing electronic data. And as part of that process, several pieces of legislation were enacted in 2013. The Electronic Crimes Act. Let me repeat that. The Electronic Crimes Act. The Electronic Evidence Act. And the Electronic Transactions Act. And as the distinguished leader of His Majesty's opposition said, the Data Protection Bill then was not enacted. Mr. Speaker, the then cabinet, headed and chaired by the leader of His Majesty's opposition, in 2021 and in 2022, asked the Attorney General's Chambers and the Ministry of Legal Affairs to, in fact, review the 2011 Data Protection Act, to engage in the necessary review and consultation, to draft. And the then cabinet, chaired and led by now the leader of His Majesty's opposition, approved in cabinet in March of 2022 this bill. Did you have the fear and concern about our citizens' rights when you sat in cabinet in March of 2022 and approved this bill? No. Oh. Mr. Speaker, regrettably, Mr. Speaker, you know, when I stand and I listen to the passion of the distinguished Member of Parliament for the Town of St. George about the need to work together, why did he not disclose that as a then Member of Cabinet, he approved this bill? So, you see, Mr. Speaker.
All right, I want us to give full attention to the members on the floor. Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If we must speak and the speak would be disturbing, I advise that we go outside. But the Honorable Prime Minister is on the floor. Please let him make his comment, his points, as we allow the others to do, please. Honorable PM.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So you see, Mr. Speaker, when we passionately claim that we are concerned about legislation that we ourselves approved, that we initiated, this was dormant. Why are we coming here? To give the impression that this government wants to push legislation down the throat of the citizens of Grenada when you are the ones who initiated, reviewed, drafted, and approved the legislation. No legislation is perfect. You can always improve. You can always tweak. We are here to debate. The process involves us going to committee. The process involves amending, if the need arises, language that may not be suitable. So don't invent a narrative about fear and warmongering and infringing the rights of citizens and then try and answer that narrative yourself. We are merely competing, and that's what we're doing, and that's why I say, Mr. Speaker, we are working together. We are merely completing the work initiated by the then government. And as responsible persons who are elected to lead, we have a responsibility to educate our citizens and not ourselves fuel falsehoods and fuel insecurity and fuel fear amongst our people. Of course, you cannot stand and say you oppose the bill because this is your bill. You approved it in cabinet. How could you get up and say you're not supporting it? You have to say you're supporting it. But for political gimmickry, the usual nonsense, you have to come and say, we need to consult, and if you say no, we will wish to proceed, we are not working together. That is what all this is about, Mr. Speaker, respectfully. It is not about the genuine need to improve the quality of the bill. Because if it was, you would be welcoming the debate. So, Mr. Speaker, you think this is surprising? Did the distinguished leader of His Majesty's opposition indicate that the party which he leads had its long press conference, press release, which repeated exactly what has been repeated here? So that is what it is, Mr. Speaker. It isn't a genuine concern about the qualitative character or content of the bill. Regrettably, it's about gamesmanship. And as my distinguished colleagues on the other side are fully aware, the suspending of the standing orders to have the bills read does not mean that the bill that is introduced is automatically the bill that will be passed, because we have the power to amend the bill. The Senate has the power to make recommendations to amend the bill. And as part of the ongoing education that has to come with all new legislation, the education of our public is part and parcel of that, Mr. Speaker. Do you think it's any surprise there's no complaint or no suggestion? I've heard no public statements about the National Disaster Management Bill, which is also on the order of people today. No, because you can't use it to encourage fear and gamesmanship. Mr. Bill, this is about data protection. My learned friends know fully well that in the current state, that there is no legislation that gives significant protection to people's data as we speak. Mr. Speaker, banks, insurance companies, governments, employers, merchants, retailers, wholesalers are collecting large amounts of electronic data from just simple transactions as we speak. And there is the risk that they could abuse, misuse, and sell that data, and there is very little or no protection to our citizens. And my learned friends know that is what this bill is about. There's an Electronic Crimes Act. There was no hue and cry about that. So, Mr. Speaker, that's why I said it seems to me we're debating the motion. The mere fact that you make a suggestion and someone does not agree with it doesn't mean you're not working together. And to stand and peddle this narrative that because you make a suggestion to this side of the house and we are not inclined to go with it, that we are not working together. And so we cannot tell our friends in London who were here last week that we're working together. So you see, Mr. Speaker, we have a responsibility, an obligation to be responsible, to educate our population, not invent narratives about fear. If there are genuine issues with the bill, they can be debated in the House, amendments can be suggested, and an improved version of the legislation can occur. And I don't need to speak on behalf of any sector of Grenadian society. It's a democratic society. Whether it's the trade unions, the bar association, the business community, creatives, persons in the ICT space, the NTRC, the telecoms companies, they are free to make suggestions and comment on the bill. We are here to debate. So, Mr. Speaker, I will conclude as I started. We are working together. We are completing a process initiated, overseen, and the only reason my distinguished friends on the other side are not completing the process themselves is because they're on the other side. So, Mr. Speaker, I certainly support the motion that the standing orders be suspended so that we may proceed with the business of the House. Thank you.
Honourable Member for the constituency of St. Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I too want to make some comments on the motion that has been raised, and I have listened to everybody, and I just want to say that from the time a few days ago, when I had a chance to quickly look at it, I spoke with my counterpart on the other side, partially, and I asked whether they intended to go take it through all its stages. And he said yes, and I said I had some concerns, but I didn't have the time then to peruse it in depth and to make my comments. And therefore, I did tell him I would get back to him. I got back to him, and I as always, the member is usually very responsive, and we have maintained a decent relationship. Doesn't always work what we ask for, but sometimes it does. And so we started on the process of how do you call it? Yes, but you know, we have to make it work in a meaningful way. And the leader of the opposition did speak, the member for St. George Northwest. He gave the history of it. So we're not hiding. But also we have come here, and I have given support to a number of bills that started in our time. And when the bills came, I gave support to those bills in its entirety, without grandstanding or anything. And all of us on this side supported. So we have set a precedent. We are not here just to oppose. But when we believe that it's burdensome enough for the people, then we have to make a request of the stronger team. They're more in numbers and they can vote us they can vote for the bill. But we are asking here for a higher level of input, not just the tribalism. And I see it emerging, and I want to beg us not to let us get to that. We do have a procedure. Bill for first reading, bill for second reading, explanation, we go in committee. But what do we alter in committee? Minor things. Very, very minor things. And this matter here now, we are asking not to put it under the rug, but give it a little time, so that the people that we represent, the people, when we're in this house, we represent the people. So we can fight on each side and we can impute improper motives and all of these things, which has been done. But that doesn't negate the fact that we are here to represent the people. And we are not here to instill fear. We are here to report what we have heard and to raise the concerns of the fear that is going on there, because people don't understand. And we also here, having studied the bill thoroughly, we also have some concerns that we believe could improve on the bill, but would not be served in the committee stage because they go a little deeper. But also we're asking, and I did ask, has there been consultation with the Bar Association? There might have been some, but very late. It didn't give them time. I think they met only yesterday. And I did hear the members from St. David and the Prime Minister say, he gave a litany of entities that also they have a right to make their concerns be heard. But where? My question is where and when and how? We are here now and we are about to pass a bill. So where are the unions and the businesses in all of this? They're not here. So we pass it here and we send it to the Senate and they have a representative. God, I hope that these persons who represent private sector and so on would delve into this bill and to look at it. But I just want to say here that there is nothing wrong with consulting, doing broad cross-section consultation. And I want to learn something from what the member from St. David said. He said we must educate. So when do we educate? After the fact? We pass that bill, we drop it on you. So now we're going to educate you and do what you want? Is that what this is about? Mr. Speaker, we do have, after discussing this thing, we do have points we would like to raise. It's not the time here for that. I do not think that it will be served in committee. And I just want to add my voice of dissent to taking the bill through all its stages and to remind us that we could have a process which could be timely, which could be in short order, if there's an urgency that would give us around this, in this honorable house, an understanding that I don't know if everybody would have had the opportunity, all 15 of us, to read it. But I want to end here by saying that we have shelved bills because we felt it needed more consultation. And we were 15 inside here. We could have passed it. We had the power. We did not do it. Therefore, we have set the examples, and this is not about power.
Yes.
And if it is about power, it is empowering the people of Grenada, Caribbean, to market. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, no, hold Honorable Head of Government Business. I have to allow Honorable
Mr. Speaker, motion was moved.
Huh?
Motion was moved. Is either we taken the motion because we effectively we debating the bill.
I indicated that earlier on. Just allow me to do it my way. So I will allow Honorable MB for St. Andrew Northeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to join my fellow colleagues on this side of the House, indicating that the motion put forward in this House this morning should be suspended until further notice. Mr. Speaker, we have admitted it. We understand the importance of data protection in this era where data access continues to evolve. So we understand the importance of it, and as the member for St. David eloquently stated, it was drafted in our time. So we are not against or opposing this bill. And we must understand that the processes by which a bill becomes law, when Cabinet approves the draft, it is not law. The member must understand that. But when we come to this house and we passes it, it becomes law. And that is key. So what we are asking for is not to grandstand. And I'm fearing that if every time the opposition indicates something, it has to be questioned, the genuinity has to be questioned, it is a serious cause for concern. We drafted this bill, you indicated so. It means that we understand the importance of this bill. What we are clearly asking for is for consultation with our people so that they can know, they can understand the consequences that is in this bill if it becomes law. So that's all we're asking, Mr. Speaker. We are not against this bill. We are not here to grandstand, but we are here to indicate that before we make this bill into law, we must consult our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, thank you, Honorable MP for St. Andrew Northeast. I am now going to take it to the vote. I've heard the inputs. I'm now going to have the vote, and we'll take it from there. Honourable members, the question is that the relevant standing order of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all stages at this sitting. All those who have that opinion, say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion, say no. Clearly the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable
Mr. Speaker.
Just hold. I didn't call you honorable leader of the opposition. Yeah, two lights were on. So
no, I think I
honorable leader of the opposition, I need to call the person.
I think you'll be happy with what I'm going to say.
Honorable leader of the opposition, please resume your seat.
Okay.
You see, two lights were on. I was trying to figure out who should light went up first.
The member said it. I'm okay.
Anybody saw which light went first? All right, so honorable leader of government business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of this bill.
No, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, I'm making a significant point here. We asked to vote on the motion. You declared the motion was approved. What I'm asking for, it's a normal practice. I want a division of the House. So it cannot go to second reading yet. There must be a division, Mr. Speaker. That's all I was trying to do.
Okay, fair enough. So we'll now vote by division.
Each member must recommend a vote.
I now invite the clerk to so do.
Honorable Dickon Mitchell, how do you vote?
I vote aye in support of the bill.
Honorable Philip Tellisford.
Aye.
Honorable Joseph Handel.
Aye.
Honorable Tevin Andrews.
Aye.
Honorable Dennis Cornwall. Aye. Honorable Ron.
Last week on Our Climate Reality.
If we, for example, speak of in the field of health, you know, the heat that has been expanding since heating up of the environment. Well, women are responsible for taking care of children and of elderly and sick children, even themselves. And that hot air, especially on houses where there are no air conditioning and so on, it makes it more difficult for women to function and fulfill their duties all day long.
To bring understanding of the issue so that at the policy level that we build kind of awareness and the work that is being done within schools. So the Ministry of Education, has launched what they call a sensitivity kind of a program so that right across the school system, there's awareness of the issues.
Join us this Wednesday on GBN TV, K105 FM, and GBN's Facebook page and YouTube channel at 8:30 p.m. on Our Climate Reality as Mr. Terrence Smith, Dr. Everson Peters, and Dr. Adrian Cashman discuss water and climate change. Our Climate Reality, made possible by Republic Bank, Hubbard's, and Classic Lighting.
Coretta James.
Do you know when you play the games of the National Lotteries at